Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you all this evening. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Dan Attridge, and I'm the Dean of the Law School. It's my great honor and pleasure this evening to introduce our featured speaker. Let me say a few words about him and our unique partnership with him. The Honorable Robert L. Ehrlich Jr. is a graduate of Princeton, where he was captain of the Tigers football team, and a graduate of Wake Forest Law School. Following law school, Bob Ehrlich has pursued two related careers, as a lawyer and as a public servant. As a lawyer, he practiced with two well-known law firms in Baltimore before running for public office. Currently, he's now the senior counsel at King & Spalding in the Washington office. As a public servant, many of you may know, Bob Ehrlich served for 8 years in the Maryland House of Delegates. He went on to serve another 8 years in the U.S. House of Representatives. And afterwards, of course, he served for 4 years as the 60th governor of my home state of Maryland. While governor, Bob Ehrlich was very committed to the proper exercise of the very important executive function of clemency. That is the topic that is near and dear to him and about which he will be speaking with us tonight. Before I call him over, I wanted to briefly describe our clemency-related partnership with Governor Ehrlich, which we began not quite 2 years ago. There are three facets to our partnership. One, we have expanded the scope of our Innocence Project Clinic, led by Professor Sandy Ogilvie, to cover the preparation of pardon applications. Two, with the leadership of Professor Karadrynan and Professor Ogilvie, we are serving as a venue for training, education, and advocacy programs about clemency. And third, very importantly, from the perspective of the Dean's office, Governor Ehrlich has raised the money to pay for all of this through generous donations.
Include your food.
All of these aspects of our partnership taken together show how cooperative efforts can directly benefit our institution, our students, and our mission to serve the public. We thank Governor Ehrlich for his central role in making all of this happen. Please join me in welcoming Governor Bob Ehrlich.
Thank you all. We're going to be very informal. I know you all have come out tonight just to hear me on a Friday night. Open bar has nothing to do with it. Some of you probably have We Hate the Patriots or We Hate the Seahawks parties to get to later. It has been a great pleasure to be associated with this great school over the past few years. When Dan told me he was leaving the private sector to take this job, I said, what? And you're really happy about this decision, right? You want to tell everybody how happy you are? Yeah, okay. We have established a great rapport, great relationship between me and my staff and this school, particularly Sandy and Cara, who have been instrumental in what you all know is happening here. I have no prepared remarks. We are going down the road quite strongly with regard to this new purple issue. Some of you have heard me lecture here the past few years. When I left Congress to run for the governorship and campaigned on this issue, it was not hot, it was not purple, it was nowhere. And as a lawyer, I just thought this is what governors do, this is what presidents do. It's part of your job description, and if you're not doing it, you're not fulfilling your fiduciary duty as governor or president. Since that time, the issue's taken off, and not just pardons, commutations, but criminal justice reform. It is the new truly purple issue. In a country so divided politically, philosophically, this may be the one issue where both sides, where George Soros and the Koch brothers can agree. How about that? Huh? And they do, and they're both putting money to it, and I can think of no other issue where that would be the case. When word leaked that as part of my legacy in public office, I wanted to establish this clinic, when the article appeared in the Washington Post, I received 5 phone calls in the next 2-3 days from law school deans. Washington area law schools, your competition. This school was by far the most serious. Sandy came to see me in my office at King & Spalding, brought a proposal. We negotiated for about 10 seconds, and we decided to get it done because you all wanted to do this. And this is not, as I said, just pardons, commutations. It's collateral consequences. It's reentry. It's the whole ball of wax when it comes to criminal justice reform. We, outside the observance of the press and outside the media, we just had a small private meeting with representatives from different governor's offices around the country. Part of our program, besides the clinical experience some of you are experiencing, is to hopefully lobby, train, encourage, cajole state administrations to become more active on this quite serious issue because it impacts lives. And when it comes down to why you attended law school, why you came to this great school, why you want to become a lawyer, I trust and I know part of that denominator is justice. One of my primary job descriptions as governor was justice. And in fact, in a very real sense, in many respects, you're the last way station when it comes to justice as a governor or a president. So we have this clinical experience. We've expanded the Innocence Project. We're talking about this very publicly. We had a great event, the National Press Club last year. We're training governors and administrations into doing this. So I would encourage all of you under Sandy Ogilvy's leadership to become more active. Our goal is to expand this program. Our goal is to take state petitions in the future, not just federal petitions. Our goal is to do what we've done, which is become the model in this country, the law school model for a real collateral consequences criminal justice reform clinic. And we've had a great start with your fantastic leadership at this law school. Now, I understand the bar is open. I understand the food's here. I understand everybody's hungry. But what I wanted to do was just take a minute or 2 or 3 or as long as you all wish to take some questions that you all might have concerning not obviously what's happening here. You know what's happening here. But with respect to this issue nationally, it is an issue at the state level. It's an issue at the federal level. It's now becoming an issue in presidential campaigns, governors' campaigns, and what you're doing here is really playing a role in that respect. So I congratulate you. I thank you for coming tonight. And again, I'll be glad to answer questions. Brady Walker, former staffer of mine, who is now my favorite staffer since he's a pro bono staffer. And Greg Missoni, who is also a pro bono press secretary, my former real press secretary. And as you get older in life, you'll appreciate how important pro bono service is. I hope you're learning it now. But Greg is my former press secretary. Brady's been associated with me for a long time. Both were instrumental in helping us establish the program here. Greg was my press secretary during my tenure. He was the person who kept telling me not to do this, that I was crazy. I was a Republican governor in Maryland. My God, what are you thinking of? Are you... Well, I don't want to really get into what he said. But he's the guy that actually had to... Raise your hand. Yeah. Old Attila the Hun there. Anyway, Greg actually had to answer the questions from the media concerning the decisions we made. And as all of you know, we discussed just this past hour, part of this process is easy. If somebody gets into a fight in Ocean City when they're 18, and nobody's done that here, I know. No. Okay, that's right. And you need a NSA clearance when you're 46. The granting of a pardon is very easy. What is not so easy is when you get a petition from someone who's been in jail for 29 years. And you look at the file and something doesn't smell right. and you see maybe the evidence didn't really come together, or assistance to counsel, you see some issue, and your office calls the prosecutor, usually retired, or the judge, usually retired, and says, you know what, the governor wants to reopen this case. And you're not going to get a very pleasant response. That's what this really is. It's the ultimate justice. It's revisiting cold cases. It's actually, in Maryland's case, with the great power the governor has, unilaterally creating that last way station on the way to justice. So we are really excited about this program. We're excited about this issue generally. We're excited about some governors willing to take these cold cases, these difficult cases, these murder cases, these mandatory minimum cases, because there's no great lobby out there asking chief executives to take on the really heavy burden, and again, encouraging them to do it, to exert leadership, and to make Maryland, in this case, but the United States of America, a more just place. So just an observation or two concerning what we're doing and why, and I'll be glad to answer any questions, and we'll go from there. Yes?
Is the focus just on Maryland, or is it?
No, it's not. It's not. In fact, Sandy, actually, in order to escape the politics, whenever I get a file, and by the way, when I get a return address at federal penitentiary, I know what's coming to me, and it happens pretty regularly. I say, there's this great professor. His name is Sandy Ogilvie, and guess what? He's going to decide which cases we take. So, Sandy, would you address that question, please?
We started this year with just federal cases because we want to have one jurisdiction. We want to concentrate on it and learn. We will then figure out how to expand that. We probably have over 100 inmates that have written to us from all over the country asking for assistance. And once we've gone through the federal cases that we have in line, we'll be starting to figure out how to deal with those. Probably, I mean, given the size of my clinic, I've got 7 or 8 students, we're not going to make a huge impact. So what we hope to do is develop a model that can be exported. Last year, about this time, there were 3 law schools in the country that were doing them. I was at a conference at Yale recently. There are now 17 law schools, and it's growing. We established a listserv recently for the number of schools that are growing. So essentially what we're doing is trying to build a model where we can export this to other jurisdictions where they can deal with some of the cases themselves.
And that multiplier times 6 was a direct result of what we're doing here, because we were the first. You know, a lot of law schools had innocence projects. None really had a collateral consequences sort of clinic, and that's what you all have done in this partnership. What else?
I'm fascinated by the process you used as governor to consider the petitions and the training that you're giving to the governor, other governors.
Yeah. Greg Missoni loves this question because it's a setup for you. You're my foil in every speech, Greg. I take him around the country as my foil because as the press secretary, you understand he had to answer the tough questions. And all of you know a guaranteed bad result is when a president or a governor on their way out of office commutes or grants lots of pardons. It's always a bad story. There's never anything good about it. So to answer the question, we knew that, and as a result, we set up a regular process, a monthly process, where I would meet with my senior staff, my Office of Legal Counsel. I had 5 lawyers working for me, 2.5 were full-time assigned to this project. So every month they would come to me. The press secretary was there, the Lieutenant Governor, Mike Steele, was there, my legal office was there, I was there. I pretended it was a democracy. In reality, there was only one vote that counted, mine, because I was the one who was going to have to answer for these decisions. So we did that, and what I wanted to do was to make this regular process. So the press, reporters hate surprises, right, Greg? Reporters hate when they think a politician has put one over on them. And the last thing we wanted to do was create that sort of stir. So What I want to do, and I did, was every month we'd say, hey, the governor's meeting, these are the petitions, that's what he's going to do, he'll render his decision, and that's that. So by year 2, it was not even reportable anymore, right? It was just what we did. And again, some of these cases are very easy, the bar fight at 18 and now 46. Some are one DWI, need a pardon for a job. God, a lot of this has to do with employment, by the way, and immigration status. Need a clean record for immigration status. The real difficult ones, the ones where you really look at your guts, your political guts quotient, are the murder cases, the lifer cases, the mandatory cases, 25 years without parole cases, because they're the ones that are most serious. They're the ones the press, Greg, will pay most attention to. They're the ones that the press will try to figure out if a fourth cousin of the neighbor across the street wrote you a check. Well, that's the reason you did it, right? So this has to be done very carefully. The resources have to be devoted. You have to have guts, and you have to believe in what you're doing. And you see this now in some governors around the country, and hopefully in future presidents as well. Yes. We are very close, as everybody knows. He was in my cabinet. The question is, will the Maryland governor, the new Maryland governor, Larry Hogan, who was my appointment secretary, who helped me pick judges in Maryland for 4 years, will he do this? I'm very, there are no outside reporters here, right? No reporters? Is anybody taping this? Greg says there are. Yes, there are. They're dressed up as students. So. Are you paranoid? Yes, every press secretary is. I've been very careful in my public pronouncements because although we're very close and he has a lot of folks in my administration there, I don't want people to see this as Ehrlich Jr. This is the Hogan administration, and he's going to make his decisions. Obviously, I have encouraged him and any other governor to assume the reins of justice. And I do believe that their process will not be exactly what we did, nor should it, but something along the lines I would hope would come about. His lawyer, his counsel, is an old friend of mine as well, Bob Schultz, a very good guy, and I've been very encouraging to him as well. Yes.
So, President Obama and Attorney General Holder have created, really ramped up the pardon office at the Department of Justice. I'm wondering how you see this new effort on behalf of the President, how you see that relating to the project here, and whether or not there might be training for attorneys.
Yeah, I've been pretty disappointed in the President. We disagree politically, obviously, but he's a very strongly progressive Democrat. And I thought this would have been a priority, and it hasn't been. So in year 7, end of year 6, he comes out with, we need to look at these mandatory sentences, these life for pot stuff, these possession offenses in federal court with inappropriately long sentences. And he's right. So he instructed the Attorney General to basically compile these cases, which is a step in the right direction. He still hasn't done, in my view, what needs to be done at the federal level, which is fix the pardons office. And I would argue to you one of the reasons it's broken is it's housed at DOJ. So, the same people putting you away are looking at your pardon now. Maybe not such a great result there. It is bipartisan broken, and it would be a bipartisan fix. This is really not, as I said, a red or a blue issue. In fact, counterintuitively, you have more conservative governors more active in this area than more liberal governors. Maybe it's Nixon goes to China. Maybe it's that syndrome. Maybe it's the ghost of Willie Horton. Does anybody know who Willie Horton is? Anybody remember Willie? Well, the ghost of Willie Horton lives over this issue. And I can certainly talk about that, but I don't care what you are, what party you are, whatever. Again, a major part of your job description is justice, and hopefully governors will do this. As far as the feds, that office needs to be fixed. The new Attorney General, obviously now and future attorney generals and future presidents need to care about this issue. This issue impacts a lot of American families, regardless of race, ethnicity, class, religion, party identification. Every line we have in our country that separates us, this issue crosses big time, more than ever. More families have been impacted by the criminal justice system than ever before. We incarcerate more people than any other country in the world. Greg Missoni, do you have a question? Oh, yes. Yes. That's a planning question, so don't worry about that.
So what's the game plan for PR? Because I'm sure the average person probably doesn't.
Question. The game plan for PR is, it's not one thing, it's a million things. It's the existence of this program. It's the existence and expansion of programs in law schools across the country. It's fixing the pardons office. It's getting candidates for governor and president to talk about it. It's passing sentencing reform. It's passing reentry reform. It's a million things, but it's most importantly, the common denominator again is being unafraid to speak about the issue. And that sometimes isn't easy. You see Governor Huckabee right now is just getting just crucified with a couple of his pardons. Every time this happens, every time storylines like this appear, a lot of press secretaries and a lot of governors will say, why? We're not doing this. Forget it. It's not worth it. We have a tough race coming up. Who wants to do this? And what, by the way, for those interested in politics, believe me, there's no credit. When I was governor, my Democratic friends would come up and say, Bobby, great, this is terrific. I can't tell the press because, we're trying to beat you next election, but this is great. And my Republican friends would be saying, what? Huh? You're doing, what is that? How's that going to help you get reelected? So the right and the left have their interesting views, but the political credit quotient doing this is not heavy and it's not deep. It's just the right thing to do. And that sometimes won't get you reelected. Greg, you want to continue any? Yeah, the question is, and I'll conclude unless there's any other questions. I want you really to have a good night. But I believe the answer to why this is such a hot issue and why people are talking about this is what I said earlier. This issue touches more families than you ever suspect. And because it does, more people are interested in the issue. And because it does, more politicians are unafraid of the issue. And because it does, more politicians are willing to do maybe risky things as governor to move the process forward. So people see this around racial lines in the past. There were philosophical lines. When I was in Congress and state legislature, it was tough on crime. We're really going to get tough, the war on drugs and all that. And now it's, we incarcerate more people than ever. Whether you're in jail or have a record may not necessarily be a function of your class anymore, particularly the drug offenses. And maybe it's time we got real as a country, as a culture, and took this head on. So that's the deal. Enjoy yourselves. Godspeed, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight.